Hi, everyone. My name is
Hi.
Marissa Robinson, and I'm so excited to welcome you all to our conversation for World Mental Health Day. We're so excited just to speak about all things therapy to help demystify therapy. And I think this conversation is going to be so helpful for any potential clients that are listening, anyone that has gone to therapy before or is looking to just re-engage or has never been to therapy and wants to learn more. We're so excited to chat a little bit, and I have the BU Psychotherapy, or some of the BU Psychotherapy team with me tonight. And BU Psychotherapy is a group private practice in Manhattan in the financial district. And we specialize in a bunch of things. We offer individual couples and a lot of groups that are running right now. We specialize in anxiety, depression, life transitions, as well as intimacy issues, women issues, and perinatal health. And all of us have a little bit of a different approach to therapy, but at the foundation, we specialize in a relational approach to therapy, which means that we all take very active and authentic and engaged approaches to therapy. But like I said, we all have our little twists. As I mentioned, I'm Marissa Robinson, and I am the co-founder and clinical director of BU Psychotherapy. And I'm with Maddie, the founder of BU Psychotherapy, and I'd love for her to introduce herself.
Hi. Thanks, Marissa. I am Maddie. I am the founder of BU Psychotherapy and fellow clinical director. I'm very excited for tonight's conversation. I specialize in working with adults dealing with anxiety, depression, all different sorts of life transitions with a focus on perinatal mental health and parenting, as well as self-esteem and working with couples and individuals on relationships. I will pass it over to Jenny.
Thank you. I'm Jenny. I am one of the senior psychotherapists at BU, and I do a bunch of different things. I would say with individuals, I work often with people experiencing anxiety, navigating life transitions, people who are looking to explore patterns in their relationships and work on healthy boundaries. I also, I guess a little bit more recently, have been running a few groups at BU, are really exciting, and they are or have been for women in their 20s and 30s. We talk all about dating and friendships and that phase of life, and it's been a really awesome opportunity to create community, which is one of the things I love the most about working here at BU. So I will, with that, pass it over to Avery.
Thanks, Jenny. And I'm Avery. I'm a clinical intern here at BU. I work largely with clients in their 20s to 30s, helping them with anxiety, depression, relationship issues, life transitions. And I'm really excited to be here on this panel tonight.
So excited. And to learn more about our services, offerings, and all the other clinicians at the practice, head to buspsychotherapy.com. And to get us started, I'm curious, how do you know when it's time to start therapy?
It's a great question. I'll go. I think that simply put, there's not one right time to start therapy, but generally, if you're wondering if or when it might be, that's a good indicator that it could be worth at least exploring. Some people come to therapy when they're in an acute crisis, so something just happened and they know they need the support. But therapy could also be really helpful in between major life events or life transitions. It could be a space to work on endless different things, which I'm sure we'll get into in this conversation. So it's really, I think, about not just why someone would start, but really figuring out if or when you're wondering about it,
Yeah.
what the next steps are to exploring who might be a good fit. And that might help answer if it's a good idea for you right now.
Totally. I feel like also just the conversations online has made it feel so much more accessible in that way of like whether or not it is the right time to go to therapy. I feel like a lot of like mental health influencers and people that are online are often talking about just having a safe space to talk. So I feel like that's also to go off of that, Maddie, like a nice check-in of like, do I just need a place to feel my emotions, to have a conversation? With someone who is not in my immediate circle. just being able to have that safe space. So I feel like also the chatter and like destigmatization of mental health online has been really helpful with that as well. I don't know, do you guys agree?
Totally. And I think what you said, Maddie, about like there sometimes people come in with there's like a crisis and or something specifically happened and that's why they're coming in. I think to connect that to what you were just saying, Marissa, I think something I hear often on a consult call or even in an intake session is, but like everything is good. Like I'm okay. And I think that there is this idea that's becoming less and less prevalent because of what you were just talking about, Marissa, which is like it doesn't have to be that you're anything's wrong to come to therapy or that there is a crisis or you coming to therapy means that something is like specifically going on that's making your life really difficult. And I think that some people can feel like that's what it's saying and can be uncomfortable with what it feels like they're admitting by coming to therapy.
Yeah,
But just to say that, yeah, it doesn't have to be a crisis, and coming to therapy doesn't at all necessarily mean anything is wrong or even specifically going on for you.
totally. Totally. So I
Yeah.
feel like like what now that people kind of are interested in therapy, what's the next step, right? Like how do people actually find a therapist as, there's more chatter online and as, we can come in for a plethora of things. How do people find a therapist? How do people normally find BU?
It can be hard.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
It
so.
can be hard. And I think that that's what sometimes really prevents people from getting the help that they need because they get a little bit discouraged.
Hmm.
I think even when you do find a match, it's hard to find someone who has like a schedule that's compatible with yours.
Yeah.
Um, I would say and I guess this is going off my own personal experience too. I love Psychology Today. It's where I found my therapist. I think it's a wonderful resource, and you could usually filter through a lot of different things, and whether it's specialty or location, whatever it may be. I also like doing a little Google search of like therapy near me anxiety, right? Like sometimes that can give you way too many options, but sometimes it could be really helpful.
Yeah,
100%.
definitely. I also think to the earlier conversation, when someone's looking for a therapist for a specific reason, that could actually sometimes make the process a little bit easier
Hmm.
because then you're looking within a very like specific niche or you want an expert on that particular area. Whereas this more general therapy that we're talking about, I know we as a practice believe is so much based on relationship and fit. And that's hard to gauge even from something like a Psychology Today profile. So I think that beyond doing the research, it's then I always will say to people on a phone consult, I really recommend you take as many phone calls as you have the energy
Yeah.
to have. So for anyone who doesn't know, most therapists will offer a complimentary consult call, a brief introduction. You explain what is going on or bringing you to therapy. They'll explain a bit about their approach, but what I really think of it is like an initial gauge of compatibility. Obviously, you can't necessarily tell in 10, 15 minutes exactly what a dynamic is going to be, but the beginning of fit, comfort, trust, rapport can be felt that quickly. And so I think that I agree with Jenny. I think Psychology Today is wonderful. I think that there is an increased amount of like word of mouth referrals that people will find us through, which is exciting. Networking, events, all sorts of things. And then I really do think that those consult calls are hugely, hugely helpful. Especially if you're a bit unsure about therapy, it could really give you like a taste of what it feels like
Yeah.
to talk to someone new. And the comfort level you do or don't feel on that call is a good indicator, I think, if you might feel comfortable beginning therapy with that clinician.
Definitely. On that note, I feel like you're right. The consult call is such an important piece for the therapist and the client. And I always say to potential clients, like, what questions do you have for me? And I guess I'm curious, what questions do you like being asked as a therapist, right? Like, what questions do you want your clients to ask on a phone consultation to start, like you said, Maddie, kind of building that relationship from the jump?
Mm.
It's a good question.
Really good question. I feel like I kind of like when, and this is going to sound weird, I like when people ask, what does a typical session look like?
Yeah.
And I say it's weird that I'm saying that because my answer to that is there is no typical way that it looks. And I maybe give an idea of what some sessions look like. Um, but I feel like that question and the reason I like it is because it tells me that that person is starting to like imagine what the experience will look like and they're already reflecting on maybe some of the needs that they have. And one of the things, and I'll say this sometimes on phone consultations, obviously part of a phone consult is, do our schedules match and does this seem like a good fit? But I think that another level to the consult call is it is starting us on like the same foot of this is an open back and forth communication, and I want you to tell me and like express what you're hoping a session looks like, and to have that kind of rapport where we can talk about what the sessions look like in a very meta way of like, where are we going to go? What are we hoping for? And so I appreciate when someone's already thinking about that on the console call. And I think it could be really helpful for them to clarify what they want and for me to be able to share a little bit about what it might feel like in a session with me, even if I can't say what it will look like.
I love that. I love
Mm.
I
Yeah.
think I also, oh, sorry, you go
No,
ahead.
you go, Maddie.
I also think a question that I like being asked is um, a little bit about, and sometimes, depending on the flow of the conversation, I'll just say it or they'll ask it, but about my experience with whatever it is that they're coming with. So, especially if someone has been in therapy before, I like when they might ask how I do something similarly or different to their past therapist. Um, because that's a good way for them to gauge. Some people loved their therapy experience and they want something similar, and then other people are like, I'm really ready to try something totally different. So it's not that there's a one right answer to it, but I feel like it's a helpful reference point if someone's been in therapy before. Whereas when someone's new to therapy, then I just kind of present the way that I do it. But I think it's helpful for me to hear what they're used to from the past, what they did or didn't like about it, and how that might relate to or be totally different from what my approach is like.
definitely. Avery, what were you going to say?
The one thing, and I feel similarly to Jenny, and there it might sound funny that this is something that I like, but sometimes clients will ask me, like what can I do to get the most out of this experience? And that's another thing where there's no right or wrong. You just show up and be yourself and build a relationship with your therapist, and you're going to get something out of it. But I just think it opens up a really nice conversation to be able to talk about how we can make the most of the relationship and of the experience for the client. And also just, really I have a lot of respect for people who show up and want to do this work and take the time. So sometimes that can be nice.
No, I completely agree. And the only thing I'll add on is like what, and kind of like what you said, Maddie, I think this sometimes happens organically of like, what's my approach to therapy? What does it feel like being in session? I love what you said, Jenny. And I think that everyone has like such a unique answer. Like hearing what you all say on your phone consultation sounds completely different than mine, and all are really beautiful and right. And so I think it's just important finding a therapist that you feel comfortable with, that you feel safe with, kind of going back to how does it a good fit? When you're on these phone consultations, like imagining, does it feel kind of natural and organic talking to this person? Does it feel, I don't know, a little bit like something's not adding up to what you expected? I think that's all good gut information of like whether or not you're kind of jiving with that person. And at the forefront of it all, it's important to feel like comfortable and safe to who you're talking about, I think what I always say to clients is, you know, the relationship is at the forefront, it's at the baseline. If we don't feel safe and we don't feel like we can have a good relationship, then no progress will get done, right? We have to feel safe with our therapist. So, any questions that will allow you to figure out that safety, I think, is an important one. Jenny, you kind of mentioned like what to expect in sessions. After the phone consultation, we go to the intake session, which for BU psychotherapy, that's an hour long. What can a client expect in that hour of a session?
I usually will say this is a longer, more
Yeah.
in-depth version of the phone consult in that it's designed to be an opportunity to again begin to get to know each other. I'll often say I don't expect to learn your entire life story in 1 hour. So that's not the goal, but we really do want it to be an opportunity to lay a pretty solid foundation for the work ahead. So part of that is like information gathering, getting to know someone, whether we start with what's going on right now and where they're at in their life today, or some people will start at the beginning and kind of tell a more chronological life story that leads them to today. And then I also throw in like some people just jump around and will be on topic one and then suddenly be on topic four. And any of those are fine. Really, it's an opportunity for your therapist to get to know more of you. And then again, for you to get to know a little bit more about your therapist. It doesn't necessarily feel like sessions do afterwards because it is so much of the like getting to know you foundation, but I feel like it's a really important place to start to then be able to dive into the work. And then the intake process happens over the first many, many sessions as you continue to learn about this person. But the following sessions might not be quite as, and then this happened, and then there's this relevant person as that intake. A question I always like to ask in the intake, I know you didn't ask this, so I'll throw it into the
Yeah,
conversation, is asking someone they could visualize themselves a few months down the road, what would make them feel really glad they decided to start therapy
I love that.
today. I feel like to our earlier conversation, not everyone has a definitive goal. It's not like we have to be I'm in therapy to like solve this one problem or answer this one question. But whether it's to adjust to, we all mentioned life transitions, adjust to some sort of change or to meet some sort of specific goal, or maybe it's to feel more connected to one's authentic self, whatever it might be. And we could kind of come up with it together. I feel like it's a helpful question for the client to reflect on why they're doing it, to feel intentional with the use of time. And as a therapist, it's helpful for me to know what it is they're hoping to get out of the experience because week to week we might not always directly talk about that thing, but to have it exist, I feel like is really nice. So I'll let someone else take over from there, but that's a bit of what an intake session with me feels like, and then a launching pad question into the work ahead.
I love it. I feel like my intake sessions have evolved over the years where it used to sometimes it feels really structured, like you were saying, Maddie, and then other times it just feels like, all right, we're in it, and like it doesn't feel like our first session, we're just here. So, I think you'll hear a lot in our conversation that it's really such a unique and like individualized yeah, sessions are just unique and individualized depending on what they're coming in for. And that's what I love about our practice too. It just feels like we really match our clients' energy depending on what they need or want. So I I'm sitting here thinking about what an intake session looks like, and honestly, it's hard to answer it. It just depends on what the client's coming in with.
Totally. I think that something about an intake session can feel so daunting for a new client. It's
Yeah.
sort of, I don't, Maddie, you mentioned like it's beginning to get a background on who they are. And you joke like, okay, I'm not gonna get your full life story in this first hour. And that's totally true. It does happen often where it's sort of like, okay, well, if I start talking about this, I kind of have to explain this, and then I have to give you the background there, and what about this person and that event? And it can sometimes feel daunting. It can
Yeah.
feel like, where do I even start? How do I begin this process? And interestingly enough, I almost find that even comes up more as a feeling with people who have been in therapy before, where it's
Mhm.
like, I've done this before. I've kind of explained everything. And I think to your point, Marissa, of it being individualized, sometimes when also like I can see it becoming overwhelming for someone, I, especially in the first few sessions, like to give more options of like, is this something that you would like a little bit more structure with? Because I do think that for some people, it's helpful to not have that structure and guidance at the beginning from me. And in so many ways, I think that in most ways, I think the client is the expert. Like they know what is the most important place to start, what the things that we should be covering first are. And at the same time, I don't want it to feel like this really overwhelming hour. And so I do like to have it be this individualized experience where we don't have to go into everything right now. And we totally could. And if you don't know where to start with what's happening right now, start from the beginning. Like, tell me about tell me about your childhood, right? That kind of classic entry. Or tell me like how many do you have siblings? Or who are your parents, right? And we can kind of start without getting into like the heavy or maybe topic that you're coming in with. And we can the what you said, Maddie, of the intake session being like really just a process over the first several sessions, it's really often the first few months. And I hope hearing that is a little bit potentially comforting for some people to know that I don't need to get everything out there immediately.
Mhm.
Totally.
Yeah, there were times where I've worked with clients for years and I'm still, obviously, we're always learning new things about our clients, but like there's information that like you would have thought comes up in an intake process, but didn't yet until
Yeah.
for whatever reason it becomes relevant again. So, um, we want to get again a foundation, but so much of that foundation is the relationship and the trust, and the rest of it fills in as it kind of needs to, I think.
100%. I guess on that note, Jenny, I like what you said of like, I, I like sometimes it's individualized, sometimes we don't know where to go, and we kind of have to lead the client. On that same kind of elk, I love when clients come in and they're like, I don't know what to talk about today, right? Like everything is good. And what do we do from here? And I feel like that's a question that a lot of people have of like, what do I do if I don't have anything to talk about? Or what do I do if I'm just in a good mood and don't want to talk about anything sad or negative? I'm curious some of your thoughts on that.
Those are like the best sessions sometimes.
Yeah, I agree. Tell me why.
I think and I totally did not make this up. I've heard this from a lot of people over the years, but this like image of like we are oh my God, I'm blanking on the word, like archaeologists. We're digging,
Oh,
and like often we are getting through like this is the ground, and we're over here and we're getting through like what is top of mind and what we're struggling with day to day. And then those sessions when you come in and it's like, oh, everything's kind of good. Like we've kind of dug through all the stuff here. That's when you go deeper. And like that's when we can get to the things that we get to put on the back burner sometimes, or maybe not even get to put on the back burner, but are forced to put on the back burner.
yeah.
And so that's the first thing I would say. And then the other piece is what if they come in and they're like, I'm feeling joyful. Like therapy's not just a sad time or um a a dark time. Like we are also celebrating things and having happy, joyful experiences together, and we want to be there to celebrate that too. So when a client comes in saying that, I kind of feel like, okay, this is either going to be a time where we're going to get to go to a place we don't usually get to go to, or okay, we get to sit in this awesome celebratory space together, and that's also wonderful.
Totally.
Yeah,
I mean, oh, you go, Maddie.
you could go.
I was just going to say, as an emotion focused therapist, my mind goes exactly to where you were going, Jenny, which is like joy is a core emotion and sadness is a core emotion. And if you take off the connotation between positive and negative, they're all just emotions and all just messages. So if we honor and are practicing how to feel sad and angry and disgusted in session, it would be really upsetting if we didn't practice feeling joy and excitement and all of the wonderful, like more positive associated emotions. So, to me, it would feel so counterintuitive if we didn't practice, if we only practiced one and not the other. And if we can't feel joy, then we certainly aren't going to be able to feel sadness or anger as well. So to me, it's all wonderful. Let's create so much space for all of the different emotions, especially joy and positivity too.
Yeah, I agree. And I like the word you used, Jenny. I know we say it a lot of celebrating
Yeah.
in session, and to be able to take time out of your week for therapy is such a, I believe, gift to give yourself. And to be able to have someone like sit there and celebrate a really like subtle or small win that might otherwise be passed by. We'll often talk about in session how stressful and challenging things demand our attention, but it's very easy to brush past the
Hmm.
okay or positive things within a week. So to have a space that also kind of like slows you down to draw attention to those is hugely valuable. I'm a big fan of like positive reinforcement. We want to recognize the things that are serving you and encourage that to replicate itself and things of that nature. So I think, like you said, Jenny, to kind of like strip away this like sad, gloomy connotation with therapy. Of course, it's a safe space to feel every emotion, but that then does mean every emotion. And then I think the other thing is sometimes clients are nervous about like talking about something that makes them feel sad, angry, anxious, whatever emotion. Um, right? Like, why would I dedicate 45 minutes to this thing that I'm already spiraling about all week and have allocated time for it? But there could be something really empowering about sitting down and intentionally talking about that thing. And also then it might become easier to refocus away from it during the week, knowing you're going to have this dedicated time. I know I have therapy tomorrow. I could focus on this then. Maybe I could refocus on this other thing right now. So even though I understand how it could seem counterintuitive, I'm trying to stop talking about this thing and then I'm scheduling time to talk about it.
Mm.
It actually can be super, super helpful for so many different reasons, but one of which I think is actually empowering. It's a choice and it's deliberate and it's structured in its flexible therapy type way. So, um, all of that's to say therapy can be light sometimes, it could be positive and celebratory sometimes, but I think another part of it is we get comfortable in the discomfort, and even really emotionally charged
Yeah.
sessions can leave a client feeling a little bit lighter than they came in, even if there's lots of tears in the middle of getting there. We welcome that.
I was just talking about that today in a session where we were talking about having that dedicated time. It was like, oh, I'm finding I'm thinking about these things less during the week. And we talked about how part of that might be like, okay, I have this dedicated time where I know I'm going to talk about it. And so my mind doesn't need to be ruminating on it all those other times.
For sure.
I love that. I mean, on that note, we're talking about how therapy feels different over, the week and that it feels like a different kind of time for yourself. How, I feel like a question that I often get is like, how does therapy differ than talking from like a friend or a mentor or a family member?
Mm.
So I love that, right? That's like a separated time talking to someone that you don't know. What else? What else comes to mind?
I love the question. I would say one of the things is that what we're doing, even though it is relational and might sometimes feel like you're just in a natural back and forth conversation, which you are,
Yeah,
it's evidence-based, right? It's different than talking to a friend. The way that I show up as a therapist in session is not how I show up in conversations with my friends.
yeah.
It is different. I think beyond that too, and this is something I hear all the time when someone is coming in looking for therapy, they're like, I want someone who doesn't know anyone who I'm talking about. And not because that means you're not involved, but because it also means you have a fresh perspective. And so, in addition to it being like we are coming from an evidence-based place, and maybe we all use slightly different frameworks. We are all coming from places of training, and it's not just a conversation based not in that. But also we haven't met you before. We haven't met your friends or your family, and we get to come in with a different perspective and have this opportunity to have this really honest back and forth that also sometimes isn't there with friends. Sometimes we tiptoe around friends and we get nervous about hurting someone's feelings or and we are gentle with what we say, but the thing with therapy is like forming also this secure attachment of like we're both going to show up, and so there is over time this ability to say what you need to say and know that like this relationship is going to be okay, and this is a place to say anything and everything, and sometimes we aren't afforded that in other relationships.
Yeah, Jenny, I was thinking the same thing. Like it's an opportunity to be really radically honest in a way that maybe we aren't with our family or friends for fear of repercussion or just habit. Um, and also, as a therapist, we're coming in with no bias, no preconceived notions, about the people in their lives or about the clients themselves. And so that can really make it a really nice, pure relationship.
Yeah. And I love what you said about it being evidence-based. The other thing I would add that's really special and unique about a therapy relationship is that it's not completely mutual in the way most other relationships are. So, as a therapist, I could say therapists genuinely do care about their clients. We care a whole lot. And also, it's unique in the fact that we are here to support our clients. And so, while it's lovely for clients to also care about their therapists, the dynamic is not supposed to be completely reciprocal. And it is time for you to come in and focus on whatever you want or need to talk about and to trust that your therapist is taking care of their stuff with their own support people. But in so many, if not every other relationship, maybe other than parent-child with young children, um, there's not that back and forth expectation. It does not need to be reciprocated. And I think that is so unique and so hugely valuable as a client to just get to occupy that space without worry about the other person. And again, that doesn't mean there has to be an absence of care, but it's just a different expectation. And I think that is a really helpful way for therapy to distinguish itself from most any other relationship. And I think that the other note on that is maybe another conversation we could transition to with like, what if you're curious about your therapist and how much do you
Mm.
get to know about your therapist? And the therapist gets to find out everything about me. And there is this like interesting dynamic at play, which I think again could be its own conversation. But for this question you asked, Marissa, I think that it's such a benefit, even if it feels kind of funny at first. I know clients are always like, I want to ask how you are, and it's lovely. And I could say, briefly how I'm doing, but to really help a client get comfortable just occupying that session.
Totally. I think like to go off of that question, like, what happens when a client asks about me? Like, I agree. It feels so nice because it is a relationship. I do care about all of my clients and feel close, right? We give a lot to our clients. So, to get like a question about me is exciting. And, I always want to make sure, like we were talking about, obviously it's all about the client. And when I do share things, I think that a question that all of us have in mind is how is this going to benefit the client, right? Like what we say in session about ourselves is only to benefit the client and to ensure that our relationship is getting deeper in some capacity, or maybe they'll benefit in some capacity by learning something about me. And I always say to my clients, like, ask if I feel like it's a boundary that I want to keep. I'll politely decline the question and we'll talk about it. It would be a conversation that we'll have. But most of the time, it feels like, yeah, it makes sense why you would want to know this about me. And I would love to share this with you to benefit you and maybe how you approach things or think about things outside of the therapy room, but also like to benefit our relationship and for you to feel like you know who you're talking to. You're being vulnerable with me. I want to be vulnerable with you as well, right? Like you were saying, Jenny, a therapeutic relationship is a secure attachment. In some ways, that is a two-way street, and how to be vulnerable with each other within a certain boundary, given, it's a little bit of a unique relationship. Any other thoughts on that? Yeah. I feel like
I think
another,
you covered it all.
oh.
Yeah. I have a different
Yeah,
question that I could
please.
ask. And Avery, maybe I'll put you on the spot first because you're the newest to it and might have like the quickest answer, but we could all think about it. Being newer to the field, is there anything that surprises you about therapy from the therapist seat? And all of us, we should reflect and think about that. But I think it'd be interesting to hear as a client who's never been a therapist, like what was unexpected stepping into the therapist seat in this way?
Yeah, I mean, the first couple of things that are coming to my mind are all kind of like pleasant surprises. I feel like, I've already been able to build like really nice, beginning relationships with a lot of my clients and just I'm just so amazed by, people and their spirit and their willingness to be open and share and their motivations to work on things that they want to improve in their lives or things that they want to change in their lives. And that might sound really corny, but genuinely that's like the first thing that comes to my mind is it's just been um really amazing. And I think also having been a client before and now being a therapist, I can think back to when I was younger and when I was newer to therapy, and I thought maybe I was the only one who felt a certain way and felt really, really alone in that. And the more I do this work, the more I realize that um, we have a lot more in common as humans than we think. And you're not alone if you feel like you are. And I think starting therapy for somebody who hasn't done it before can help them maybe feel that way too.
Love
Yeah.
that. I'm trying to think. That's an interesting
Yeah.
one.
I you reminded me with your answer, Avery, but when I was starting in this work, and maybe even still, but I feel like I would get so many comments from people like, "Oh, isn't that depressing?" or "How can you like,
Mm.
handle hearing all of people's things?" And for one, to our earlier conversation, not every session is necessarily depressing, but also I think what I was pleasantly surprised with in doing the work is seeing how unbelievably like strong and resilient people could be. So in a way, the heavier, more depressing a session is, like the more in awe of people I became. So I think I've always been an optimistic person, but being a therapist has only like strengthened that optimism. It's such a privilege to get to know people intimately and to see how, like you said, Avery, like people are more similar than they are different, and everyone has super unique life experiences. But to be able to just sit with someone in whatever they're going through, um, has not felt, and this is again not with an absence of care for what they're going through. There's empathy, and at times it is hard when you're really feeling for someone going through a hard time, but the overwhelming reaction for me is like just deep respect for my clients and people and what they're able to adapt to and overcome. Yeah.
Totally. I mean, it's such a privilege, right? Like, I feel like when I'm in session, I like how this is turning into like our favorite things. But it is such a privilege. Like, after the sessions, and I completely agree, like, in the most vulnerable places, and they share something that maybe they haven't shared with anyone before. It just feels so special. Like it just feels like, wow, like you're trusting me, right? Like you don't know me. I'm a random person, sometimes even on a screen, and we haven't even met maybe in person before. And that just feels so like courageous and brave and vulnerable and like just speaks to how strong a human connection can be when we strip away all of the stigma and social norms and social, structure and things like that from the outside and just be able to see like one human to another, similar to what you were saying, Avery, of like, wait a second, we're together, like, and how big of a privilege it is that you get to share that with me, someone that, we're building a relationship from scratch from. Pretty cool. Jenny,
That's
what's your
great.
favorite part?
My favorite part. Oh my goodness. Oh, I hate picking favorites, so I'm gonna say one thing that has been on my mind a lot that I really like.
Okay.
Um, I would say one of the most special parts for me is being able to go through different life phases with clients and life moments and getting to see all the different things that one person experiences and be by their side throughout, yes, all the ups and downs, but all the um, maybe the different identities they take on, the different things that consume their life at different moments, and growing with the client. I think being able to witness that is my favorite part because, like you were saying, it is a privilege. Like you get to intimately know someone and share pieces of all of these really special moments in their life, difficult moments. Um, we really sit in the emotion with our clients. And so in a lot of ways, it feels like we're in it with them. And it's awesome to see them go through all the different things.
I love it. Well, there's so many favorites, and I feel like this is just like a nice way to wrap up that, happy World Mental Health Day. And obviously, I feel like we can feel right now how special therapy is for the therapist. And I hope whoever's listening and watching that you feel like that special feeling and warm feeling. And hopefully, it motivates you to get a therapist, to inquire more, to find a therapist that feels right for you. Um, and of course, we are accepting new clients. So feel free to head to buspsychotherapy.com if you want to work with one of us or the other wonderful therapists at our practice. But hopefully, this cleared things up for everybody, and it's a really beautiful thing. So, happy World Mental Health Day, and thank you all for being here.
Happy World Mental
Thank
Health
you.
Day.
This was so fun.
Okay.
So
See ya.
fun.